Is the creative work of the Game of Wool contestants being fairly compensated? Or is it possible that their labour's being exploited? I sincerely wanted to like the Game of Wool. I've watched nearly every season of the Great British Bake Off and the Sewing Bee, and I was really excited that my favourite hobbies, knitting and crochet, would be getting their own game show. But capitalism and the never-ending drive for profit has left me feeling deflated and disappointed. Firstly, I'd like to address one of the initial common criticisms of the show because I think it's relevant. A lot of people were saying comments about the show wasn't taking knitting seriously enough, or the format didn't reflect real knitting, and maybe the tasks were too big or too out there. That part I can possibly defend or at least explain. The show leans into something very specific. It's something that's now called Cosy Comfort TV. It even has a category on iPlayer. Cosy Comfort TV refers to programming that feels safe, familiar, and gently entertaining. People often describe it as wholesome, nostalgic, and heartwarming. It usually features slow pacing, pretty scenery, and soft humour. I think this type of TV plays a cultural role in the UK. It offers escapism when everything else in the world feels pretty grim right now. Some people compare it to the idea of hygge in Scandinavian culture. It's a warm, cozy blanket of television, an anaesthetic to the painful world that we live in. In British dramas, that means shows like Cult the Midwife, Downton Abbey, All Creatures Great and Small, and The Vicar of Dibley. In lifestyle shows, it's things like The Great British Bake Off, The Sewing Bee, Gardener's World, and The Repair Shop. And it's insanely popular. Take a look at the TV viewing figures from last week in the UK. I think nearly every single one of these programs, all bar Hunted, it could be argued that they are Cosy Comfort TV. And it's a global phenomenon. US shows like Gilmore Girls, Parks and Rec, Frasier, Arrested Development, Is It Cake? They all follow a similar formula. And the shows can become really meaningful to people. In fact, there's a CBS News story from 2016 about a group of US Marines in Iraq who watched Gilmore Girls during downtime. One US Marine said that they thought of Stars Hollow as the America that they wished they were fighting for. So myself and a lot of people really get the appeal of this sort of TV show. The world is rough. We often want soft, gentle TV. Not every media we consume needs to be intensely intellectually stimulating. And I question if the Game of Wool was people designing intricate lace shawls over a month, instead of trying to knit dog bonnets and giant sofa covers in a day, would there still be the humorous, preposterous, rushing element that creates that sort of light-hearted drama where nobody actually gets hurt? Let's take a look at the Bake Off. The amateur version reached massive audiences, over 10 million in its heyday. Meanwhile, Bake Off the Professionals has solid but much smaller numbers of around 2 to 3 million. We clearly prefer amateurs doing their best to experts performing something flawlessly. I think we might get a warm fuzzy feeling watching amateurs muddle through slightly bonkers challenges. And the Game of Wool is trying to tap into that vibe. But here's where things can go wrong. The uncomfortable truth is that this Cosy Comfort TV can produce a strong and loyal following of fans across demographics. These are the kind of shows that households watch together, talk about at work, and look forward to weekly. This massive, loyal following can only mean one thing to execs: money. Now, these shows have always had strong product potential. Think books, kits, cookware in the case of the Bake Off. And with Game of Wool, that potential is even stronger because they're targeting brand new knitters. Tom Daley is quoted as saying, "The idea of having this show on national TV is to get a new generation knitting." And what do new knitters need? Well, tools and yarn. Very quickly after the first episode aired, Rowan and its sister brand, Wool and the Gang, began releasing kits based on designs seen on screen. Now, at first, this sounds quite fun, and maybe a way to support your favourite contestants on the show. Until you hear that the contestants who created those designs are not being paid a penny. When asked if the contestants were being compensated, Rowan Yarns responded, "Our partnership is with the Game of Wool and Channel 4, who run the show and therefore own the rights to what has been produced, not the individual creators in the show, and that we give them a spotlight on our platform." The same message was posted on the Wool and the Gang Instagram account. It does seem to be passing the buck onto the producers, but ultimately this was a decision made by both parties. I think a prospective buyer browsing the site might wrongly assume that some of the proceeds are going to the contestants if they don't do any further research. Now, legally, I know that the production company and the manufacturers are fully within their rights to do this. Contestants will have signed contracts handing over their intellectual property for any material that they've created whilst on the show. That's standard in TV and just employment in general. But these are not salaried employees. These are just everyday people trying to make a living, and maybe a small commission for selling something that came from their creative brains should be due. What makes this situation really strange is that Wool and the Gang normally do better than this. They have an established history of working closely with designers and makers. They've collaborated with Katie Ann McEwen, Patrick McDowell, Bethany Williams, which was a charitable collaboration for the Magpie Project. And they even run quite a large makers market where they collaborate with independent designers. All of this shows they know perfectly well how to collaborate in a fair way. So why are the Game of Wool contestants excluded from that? It just doesn't sit right. The contestants are the lifeblood of these shows. And the ironic thing is they would have certainly made more money if people knew that some of the profits were going to their favourite contestants. They'd want to support those makers. And it's not unprecedented either. On the show Making the Cut, which is produced by Amazon, the winning designer each episode gets their design produced and sold. And crucially, yes, the designer is paid. And this is Amazon we're talking about. All of this is reminding me of the knitting.com fiasco, where two non-knitting businessmen tried to monetize the knitting community without understanding or respecting industry norms, and the backlash was massive. And of course, the recent Hank Green drama, where the knitting community was left feeling sidelined and misunderstood. Now, I do have some other concerns with the show. Another area that's worth talking about is welfare and transparency. Knitting can be a physically demanding hobby, especially if you're working against the clock or with really chunky yarn and giant needles. Some shows like The Sewing Bee will openly talk about giving contestants breaks between filming. So with the Game of Wool, it's reasonable to ask, were there structured breaks, especially for contestants with chronic pain, sensory needs, autism or ADHD? What support was available during those long filming days, if any? Were there safeguards in place for hand health, repetitive strain and fatigue? When a show is aimed at beginners, it has an extra responsibility to cover this. New knitters might not realize how normal it is to take breaks, stretch, and protect your hands. If the show glosses over that, it risks giving the impression that non-stop 12-hour knitting is okay. Anyone in the knitting community knows that can put you at risk of things like tendinitis. At the end of episode 1, it felt like Meadow was forced into a group hug after she'd just declined a team hug moments earlier in the episode. And they didn't show her giving consent for that. And I don't know if that was just an editing thing or if she was forced into that uncomfortable situation. There's also been some misinformation. Feral knitting has strict rules and techniques. They could have simply called the stranded colour work in the show inspired by feral knitting, and then it wouldn't have been an issue. It's a small point, but if the show's aiming to educate beginner knitters, then it's an important one. I think think and I hope that the show will improve with future seasons. We have seen it before. The early seasons of The Sewing Bee were quite different from what the show eventually became. Following feedback, the format was refined, the challenges tweaked, and the tone settled into something that many viewers ended up loving. I hope that the Game of Wool will take a similar path. I genuinely hope that the show will improve. It has the potential to be a brilliant platform to promote knitting, uplift makers, and bring people joy. I think that Tom Daley has a genuine passion for knitting, and he seems like a nice guy, to be honest. So here is what would help. Pay contestants when their designs are sold. Improve transparency around process and welfare. Put clearer safeguards in place if they aren't already. It's not too late to turn this around, and I really think that it would be a win for everybody. Cosy TV doesn't have to come with woolly morals. It can be comforting and joyful while also championing the makers behind the scenes. Thank you so much for listening to just my opinion on this whole thing. I'd really like to know what you think. Please do so in the comments below. If you'd like to see more content like this, why not subscribe to my channel, Knitting with Catherine? And I hope to see you soon. Have a lovely day. Bye.